you are gone. You're dust. Because if you just use AI to replace people, to cost cut, you are diminishing your brand. Yeah, you might be running a bit leaner for a while, but somebody is going to so outcompete you by delivering value in new ways that you're just going to be irrelevant.
Welcome to the Leader's Mindset, where we bring you conversations with leaders who are making an impact in business and our communities. Today, I'm here with Steve Brown. He's an artificial intelligence futurist, expert, and keynote speaker, as well as the author of the AI Ultimatum. Thanks for joining us today, Steve.
Thanks, Jason. Great to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this discussion. We've got a lot to talk about. But first, what does it even mean to be an AI futurist? And how does one get into that line of work? Because it sounds really cool.
Yeah, futurist is a bit of a weird title. I know it sounds like I'm a fortune teller, or I go into a darkened cave and smoke a lot of peyote and think big thoughts. But it's a discipline. It's an orientation to thinking about the future in a structured way and looking at trends and how those trends might come together over time and what will be possible in the future. So a good futurist doesn't make predictions. They just talk about what might be possible, what people could do in a certain time frame. As an AI futurist, I am laser focused on probably the most important technology of this century, probably of the last century too, and how that is going to shape our lives and what it means for business and how that technology is going to evolve over time. It's a tricky business to be in because it's moving at such a rapid pace, but that's what I try to do for my clients, is to help them figure out what's going to happen next in AI and what do I need to do about it.
I think it's really important. You mentioned that you don't make predictions, you talk about what's possible. And we have a tradition of futurists, at least in the United States and Western Europe, going back at least 100 years. And so people like to point to books that were written in the 1970s that futurists wrote that were about what's possible. And they go, well, they got that wrong and they got that wrong. So why should we listen to you, right? And I want to make it really clear for the audience, a futurist's job isn't to predict the future. It is to tell us what's possible. And how we can, what I really like about your book is we can put some optimism around what's going on with AI.
Yeah, I mean, fundamentally, a futurist is there to help people ask and answer two big questions. One, what is the future that we want to build? And two, what is the future that we want to avoid? So we have agency in all of this. We often think, well, the future is something that's going to happen to us. Well, yeah, but we get to shape that future with the actions that we take today. And that's what I'm trying to empower people with, is making the decisions about where they want to go with their businesses. What are they trying to build?
Yeah, also really important, right? It's not somebody somewhere else making these choices. It's us making our choices for our own lives, our own families, our own companies, because especially with AI, it looks like it's going to be very consumer driven. And we're already seeing changes in how some of these models work based on consumer feedback, right? We've all said, hey, too much hallucination, right? And you don't need to tell me how great I am every time I ask you a question, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it may have started more consumer focused, but it's very quickly infusing into business. And you're going to see OpenAI lean more onto the enterprise side of their business. They're already doing that. Anthropic has been rewarded, at least in the private share market, before their orientation towards the enterprise. So I think you're going to see a lot more AI for business, if you like, in the coming months and years.
Yeah, I love it. I love seeing the changes that have occurred just since the last time you and I talked in January. Things are so different now. And it's only been about 2 months since you and I talked. So,
right.
All right. So what is the AI Ultimatum?
Well, it's a two-part thing. It's sort of carrot and stick, if you like. The first one is more obvious, which is this is moving so quickly, and the difference in capability between a business that has fully embraced AI and one which is maybe slower or has not embraced AI at all, that gap is going to grow so great that businesses have no choice but to jump on that bus, right? That's a big part of the ultimatum. You have to embrace AI, you have to use it, and you have to use it in a way that's meaningful as fast as you can. So that's one side of it, sort of the race bit, innovate or die, if you like, put in a different way. The other part of it is that as we all do that, we need to do it responsibly. That leaders need to step up and think about AI in a different way than they have perhaps for previous technologies. It's not something that you can just deploy and use to get rid of headcount, right? And save money and productivity and cost cutting. You can do a lot more with AI. And in fact, the imperative is that you need to amplify the people that you have with AI and have more impact in the world. And use that to compete, because if you don't do that and your competitor does, you are gone. You are dust. Because if you just use AI to replace people, to cost cut, you are diminishing your brand. You might be running a bit leaner for a while, but somebody is going to so outcompete you by delivering value in new ways that you're just going to be irrelevant. So that's the other side of that ultimatum, is to do it responsibly and think about long-term impact.
Yeah, I think you've described this when we talked the first time about this is the difference between 20th century thinking and 21st century thinking. As leaders, besides value, which has always been important in the marketplace, what are some other things we need to be thinking about to do true 21st century thinking?
Well, first, that shift from cost cutting to value creation. But thinking about, one of the things I talk about in my keynotes is possibility thinking, asking the question, how could we? And having great ambition and vision for that, having the courage to ask big how could we questions. So how could we grow the business 5x next year? Not 15%, not 20%, 5x or 10x. What would it take to do that? And how do we make AI the engine of our business and then wrap people around it? So it's a different mindset, different orientation. If you can get into that AI first mindset, where you make AI the engine of your business instead of people the engine of your business, that collapses constraints of cost and time, lets you compete in a different way, and lets you start to completely reimagine the business, your business models, your products and services, how you go to market, how you service customers, because now you can start to do things like hyper-personalization at scale. So you can market to each individual client in a different way that's suited to them. You can maybe create products that are designed for specific groups of people. That's what Shein does. Shein, the Chinese clothing company, they've done a great job of moving towards becoming this AI first company because their leadership team had an orientation towards how do we build learning loops? How do we use AI to not just make our business go faster because we're replacing people with technology, with machines? That's that 20th century thinking. The 21st century thinking is, how do I create a learning loop where I learn, I see trends in the marketplace, I act on them. They do micro runs of production where they might make 100 to 200 garments, get them out quickly in the marketplace in 3 days after sensing a trend, get feedback on those sales, and if they go well, then they amplify that. And then they make 1,000 garment run, then they make a 5,000 garment run. That's a completely different way about thinking about business and speed, learning and solving problems for your customers much faster than any of your competitors. So it's just a different way of showing up in the world, and leaders need to think differently about using AI not to replace, but to amplify and then to cut costs in other ways because you're going faster.
Yeah, if you're looking to amplify, if you're looking how do I use the people I've got better, and then how do I do that in service of something like not a 15% cost reduction, but a 5x, 10x, 20x increase in revenue. And you and I both have worked in the startup community. We don't get up for anything less than like, why are we doing this if it's less than 10x, right?
Right.
So, that's a shift in that thinking for corporate. is, well, if we want to get to these 5x, 10x, 20x kinds of things, how do we use our people better? And then how do we use AI to do that?
Yeah, and you're looking to amplify the people you have. The best assets you have in the company are your people. So how do you use technology to turn them into superheroes, amplifying and extending their abilities so they can do things they couldn't do before? That's the way that Jensen Huang is thinking about it, right? He's running the biggest, at least by market cap, company on the planet, NVIDIA, and he's looking at growing his workforce. He was asked this question about a couple of years ago. What's the plan for your workforce? He's going to grow from about 30,000 to 50,000 people, supported by 100 million AI assistants across every group. So he's got big, ambitious goals. And that's what leaders need to do, is they need to find courage for a bold vision where they're looking to have enormous impact in the world. The internet enabled smaller companies to appear larger and serve a global market for the first time. What AI does is it enables a company, a smaller company or medium-sized business, to have the impact of an enterprise class business. That's the difference. That's what leaders need to be going for.
I love that. I hope if people watching or listening don't take anything away of that, is that this now enables your small company to compete with big corporations in a way like never before. And if you're a big corporation or someone working at a big corporation, it allows you to amplify what your people are doing and use them in a way that's really going to bring you to the stars.
Yeah, I think people are seriously talking about who's going to be the first $10 trillion company on the planet. And then after that, the first $50 trillion and the first $100 trillion company. Just because you're big now doesn't mean you can't be much bigger and have much more extraordinary impact in the future, using AI, harnessing AI to be able to, 10x or 100x the impact that you have for the people of planet Earth.
The race is on, and I know those trillion-dollar companies are the ones that are closer thinking that way right now.
Exactly.
So for folks who are still getting acquainted with the tech behind AI, give us a quick rundown. What are the differences between models, programs, agents? And then as leaders, why is that all important for us to know?
Yeah, so let's start with programs. Programs people are probably familiar with. If you use an Excel spreadsheet, you run a game, they're programs. And a program executes instructions. And the program will run the same way every time when you put different inputs into it. And a program is there to turn inputs into outputs. If I'm playing a game, I press this key, the spaceship moves on the screen. If I press this key, the spaceship moves the other way on the screen. Right? So inputs to outputs, and it's programmatic. It's determined ahead of time by the programmer. Models are different. Models are what AI is based on. You think about it as it's a neural network. So it uses a network of connections, and inputs move from one side to the other, same as in a program. But the way that the data moves from one side to the other in this network is determined by training that network. So you give it examples. If you have this input, it should be this output. If you have this input, it should be that output. If you do that enough times, the network will train itself so that when you give it new input, it gives you a new output. That's a very theoretical, opaque explanation of what's going on there. So let me give you a concrete one. You might train a network by showing it examples of photographs. And those photographs might be of a cat, a dog, and a banana. And you label them. This is a cat, this is a dog, this is a banana. You show it enough examples, you show it a new photograph, and it will be, there's never seen before, and it will be able to accurately predict and categorize whether that is a cat, a dog, or a banana. It does that through the training process. And that's the power of models, is it is able to solve problems that we don't know how to solve ourselves. It's very hard to write a program to analyze the pixels in a photograph and look for, a wet nose or pointy ears and whiskers and determine whether it's a cat or a dog. Banana's a bit easier because it's bright yellow, but you get the idea here. It lets us solve problems we don't know how to solve ourselves, and that's why it's important for leaders to understand. It lets you find patterns in data. When it comes to agents are using that AI capability, but they're wrapping some programmatic element around it. You mentioned earlier on that one of the challenges we've had with models like ChatGPT and Gemini is that they hallucinate, right? They trip out and make stuff up. It's not because they're evil, it's just because they don't have enough grounding data to help them tell you the correct answer. And they fundamentally don't understand the difference between you asking them to write you a poem and answering a factual question. So an agent is essentially, it's a large language model. So think a ChatGPT or a Gemini or a Claude. And what you've done is you wrap some other capabilities around it. The first thing you add is an ability to sense the world. So it understands your context, because an agent is there to help you. And so it may be able to see what's happening in your browser or on your screen. So it knows what you're working on right now. Second thing it has is a memory. So it learns not only your wants and likes and quirks, so it can adapt its behavior to work with you better, but so it can learn from its own mistakes. So it does self-reflection and gets better over time. Third thing, it has a planning module. So it can take quite complex tasks that you give it, break it down into subtasks, and then execute those tasks. Now, how does it execute them? Using the fourth module it has, which is an action module. Action module lets it connect to tools, things like search or a tax calculator, whatever it might be, or to existing systems. So to your CRM to get your customer data, to your ticket data for your customer support, whatever it might be. So it talks to legacy systems. What you're essentially building with an agent is a digital employee, and there's a framework that wraps around it that is more programmatic, that helps overcome those hallucinations. It's a little bit like a wild horse. You put a cart on it and a rider, you're helping to guide it in the correct direction and make it do useful work. That's what an agent is, and they are going to change every aspect of work in every business on the planet.
Yeah, I've been experimenting with agents for about a month now. That's it, a month, and my workflow in my business has changed completely.
So say more. What are the experiments you've done? What are your biggest successes?
For regular viewers of this podcast or listeners to this podcast, you know that I every Tuesday I do an educational episode for about 3 to 5 minutes on a leadership topic. So one of my agents goes and brainstorms leadership topics, does research, comes up with a bunch of script ideas, and then creates a script outline. And then we go back and forth on it, and we use that to train the agent and train the model to go back and refine and improve the scripts it presents to me. And it does that once a month. So, and provides me all the scripts I need for the next month. And then now we're still in the phase of training it. Like, I wouldn't really say it this way. This isn't really a good reference, that kind of stuff. But it's really streamlined my process.
Awesome. Yeah, I have a very simple agent I use. I'm a keynote speaker. People reach out to me through my website. The first thing I used to do when an inquiry came in is I would look at the email address and say, oh, is this a real company? Let me go research that company. Let me find this person on LinkedIn. Let me look at how much revenue that company makes. What industry are they in? What are their interests? And now I have an agent that does all of that for me and then just sends me an email with all the information about the person who is inquiring and the company that they're from. It's great.
I love that so much, and I'm going to steal that because one of my other agents is when someone expresses interest in being on this podcast, it creates a record for them in a database and populates all that from the CRM and the request to be on the podcast. But I haven't done what you've done yet and have it go do the research on them. And I think that's going to be how I spend my afternoon today.
It's awesome and easy, and you can do it with Zapier.
Yeah. So tell us what the bias mirror is and how it applies to the AI technology, but also what are the broader implications for how we're leading our organizations when it comes to bias and the bias mirror?
Yeah, I mean, most AIs are trained on human-generated data. And so what they learn from that is human traits and human biases. And that's not always good because humans ain't perfect. So, I'll give you an example. Amazon was overwhelmed with the number of resumes they were getting. They were in a hiring phase a few years back. They built an early AI model that was trained on all the resumes they'd received. It was labeled which resumes were people that we ended up hiring and which resumes that people that we ended up not hiring. And when a new resume comes in, make a recommendation. Is this somebody we should bring for interview or not? And when they tested that model, what they found was it was biased against women. And it wasn't even that there was a gender assigned in the data set. The AI was able to infer that because there are some colleges that women go to more than men. You can look at the name, and there are female names and male names generally, and even the sports that they played. And so the AI figured out that these were women, even though it wasn't explicitly told. It turned out it was biased against them. Now, why did that happen? Was that an evil AI? No. It was reflecting Amazon's historical hiring practices. And you said bias mirror. That's what I mean by that. AI is a mirror we hold up to ourselves. That held a mirror up to Amazon and their historical hiring practices, and they had to, one, scrap that AI, and two, go and do an examination and say, why have we been hiring and leaning towards hiring men over women? So it's important when you are training AIs, when you're training models to do work in your organization, that you're mindful about potential historical bias that is in your training data that is going to perpetuate issues and perhaps even amplify them going forward. So you need to be mindful of that, scrub the data, and make sure that you're not capturing human biases in your models. Because the way I think about it is this: we all want our children to be better than us. We should all want our AI models to be better than us.
I agree, and so the book is fantastic. We're gonna dig into the book in a little bit in a little more detail later, but the book is fantastic. And what was that's where I got the term bias mirror. I didn't come up with that. Steve came up with that in the book. But there are really, really great explanations in the book that are not overly technical, that explain, just like you explained to us, how these models and agents are trained. And it was fascinating to me that even in this case with Amazon, the unspoken rules inside the company, because of the way AI models are trained and AI models learn, the AI model learned the unspoken rules, even though the spoken rules were in direct competition with the unspoken rules. And I think that's really important for us as leaders to understand. In every organization, there are unspoken rules. So understanding what they are and then making conscious choices about what we do as leaders. Is that a good good unspoken rule? Sometimes they are. Sometimes that goes to values and ethics and that kind of thing. And sometimes they're not great, and we want to make a change.
Yeah, rules versus reality, and AI will always learn reality,
which I didn't really understand until I read the book. So it's pretty fascinating. And in the book, you introduced something called the CEO framework. Tell us about how we can use that with AI to provide value, whether that's to our customers, our stakeholders, our employees, whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean, less so now, but certainly a year or more ago, I would meet with leaders and they knew AI was a big deal. They knew they needed to do something with it. But the most common question I would get is, so Steve, where do we start? What do we do? Where do we focus our efforts to begin with? And I would tell them it's not quite as easy as that. What you need to do is take a balanced approach. And there are multiple ways that you need to balance your efforts. And so one of those, I offer a number of frameworks in the book to help find that balance. And one of them is the CEO framework: customers, employees, and operations. So those are three areas where you can deploy AI to have impact. You can improve your customer experience, and there are lots of examples in the book about companies and how they have done that or might choose to do that. Employees, amplifying your employees, elevating their performance so that they can do more. And notice I say performance and not productivity there. Productivity is one vector of performance. There are many others. AI is a different technology. Sure, it will elevate productivity and efficiency, but it also can amplify an employee's creativity, boost their intuition, improve their decision-making quality, and so on. So there's a lot that can be done there. And then operations, there are, again, lots of examples in the book of using AI models to improve your operations and to streamline them. A great example is one of my clients is in uranium mining, and they use AI to control the drill heads as they're drilling into the ore. And it turns out that they spray out water, and the heads spin, and the speed that the head spins and the pressure of the water varies over time. And if you do it right, using AI to control that process and getting feedback from the wellhead, you can improve the yield that you get back as you're mining uranium. And that can be worth tens of millions of dollars just by implementing that AI. So what you want to do when you're thinking about where you deploy AI across your company is find that balance. You want to do some in improving the customer experience, a fair amount in elevating the performance and capabilities of your employees, because that runs across the company, and then some in optimizing your operations, streamline them so that, yes, you can improve productivity and cut costs. Balance, balance, balance.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And it is so impressive how balance just keeps coming up in the book and in the conversation about this. One of the other really cool analogies you use in the book is looms, slide rules, and cranes. Tell us what those are and why this is important to us as leaders.
Yeah, and fair credit, that's not mine. That's Roy Bahat's. He's the leader at Bloomberg Beta, the VC arm of Bloomberg. And he came up with this notion of looms, slide rules, which is a very ancient thing. Most of your listeners won't even know what that is. I vaguely remember them. And
I
cranes.
can use one because I learned to fly in the 90s when you still had to use the whiz wheel circular slide rule to navigate.
Okay, well, so let me explain what they are. So I translate them in the book to offload, elevate, and extend. So a loom is thinking about AI, right? They can play different roles in our lives. A loom is a machine that took over a job that a human did, and it does it as well or better than a human, right? It's an offload of a task. And you're going to see a lot of agents that do that. The jobs that we don't want to do, the tasks that we're not interested in. Get these 5 people together in a meeting room next week. Boring, but an agent can do that very quickly for you. So there's lots of these tasks that will offload. They will take the suck out of our jobs. They're the looms, okay? The slide rule is this sort of very archaic piece of plastic that you would use to solve scientific mathematical challenges, sines and cosines and tangents and that sort of thing. And a slide rule is a tool that helps you to do something you could do without that tool, but do it faster, right? That's what the slide rule analogy is. And there will be agents that partner with us that help us to do something we could do already, but just to do it better, right? They will elevate our performance. Whether that's faster or cheaper or more creatively, they will elevate our performance. So that's what the slide rules are. What Roy Bahat tells people is you need to focus on building more cranes and fewer looms. That's where you'll really have impact with AI. And a crane is a machine that lets you do something you could not do before. You couldn't build Manhattan without cranes. So in the AI world, what you're trying to do is build AIs or agents that partner with people to give them capabilities, to extend their capabilities so they can do things they could not do before. And that's the real breakthrough, when you turn your employees into superheroes.
Yeah, so looms and slide rules are interesting, but they're not really the exciting thing, right? They will help us, but if we really want to be trying to get those 10x's, 20x's, 30x's we were talking about, we really need to not just be thinking in terms of looms and slide rules to make our employees' jobs easier, but creating these cranes that are gonna blow things out of the water.
Yeah, I mean that's the trick is how do you turn every employee in your organization into a superhero with abilities that they hadn't dreamed of before?
All right. Well, more on that later. I want to take a break and play a game. Are you up for a game?
Always up for a game, Jason. Let's do it.
All right. The name of this game is Rapid Response. I'm going to ask you a
Ooh,
series of questions. I want you to respond with the first thing that comes to mind. Now, don't be fooled by the word rapid. You don't have to give a one-word answer. You're not really on the clock, although the music will be playing in the final version of this episode.
Okay.
But we want to get to know Steve Brown a little bit better. But you don't elaborate as much or as little as you'd like.
Okay. Deal.
All right. Steve Brown, rapid response round. Your time begins now. A podcast recommendation.
Last Week in AI.
Oh, okay. I don't know that one. I'll have to start checking that one out. Do you know who does that?
It's a couple of researchers. They're now building their own startups. But if you want a technical but not too technical explanation of what's happening in that week in new models and capabilities, they're a really fun one that I listen to. I enjoy that every week.
Sounds like a great place to start for people who want to learn about AI.
Definitely.
What is a practice you'd like to see more people embrace?
Gratitude. We all have pretty amazing lives, and yet we all bitch and complain. So I think we should all just reflect a bit more on how good we have it.
Yeah, gratitude's a hard one. It's kind of something we constantly need to remind ourselves about.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, same. I definitely need to remind myself on a daily basis to be grateful for the good things in life, or even the bad things that help. Who is someone we should all be paying attention to?
Oh, I don't want to say the first thing that comes to mind because it's too obvious and we all have to watch it on the news every damn day. Who should we be paying attention to? Let's go with Sir Demis Hassabis, the CEO of Google DeepMind. He's an extraordinary man with a big brain and a pretty big heart too, who wants to create artificial general intelligence. And he made that his life's ambition decades before anybody knew what that term was or even heard of that term. But he wants to create extraordinary intelligence so that we can make life better for people on Earth. And he's already contributed a lot in that realm. He won a Nobel Prize for his work in chemistry, biology, with AlphaFold, which helps us understand proteins and how the body works better, so that will lead to new medicines and cures in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years that we all benefit from. So I can't wait to see what Demis is going to do next.
I agree. Someone who's already got a Nobel Prize and is continuing to work hard on the next big thing, I think that's definitely worth paying attention to.
Yeah, he's an awesome guy.
What is either your get pumped up song or your walk on music?
My walk on music is often, and I did 55 keynotes last year. So my walk on music most commonly is Daft Punk, Robot Rock.
Good one. The biggest influence in your life?
My dad, probably. Yeah, I'm like a mini me. Only he's got more hair than me, which is nice.
Was he in tech too?
He was a physics professor, and then he ran a university and retired some 20 years ago, 15 years ago. But yeah, he was the reason I got into this in the first place, because as a physics professor, he would get these computers, very early computers, and bring them home from work. He used them to control equipment in his low temperature lab, and he'd bring them home and I would play with them. So I got access to computers in the late 70s, and I knew then they were going to change the world.
It's fascinating. It's fascinating what we could do with 64K on one of those old computers. Right? We used to do, for those of you who don't even know what a K is, I mean, that's it. That's all we had was kilobytes of memory of active RAM and storage. And we could do word processing, we could do spreadsheets, we could do all those kinds of things you do today with much less capable computers.
64K, that's luxury.
Yeah, right?
The first computer I programmed had 1K of memory. And if you were lucky, you could buy a 16K RAM pack that you jammed on the back of it, and you had to hold it in place with rubber bands because it was so heavy it would snap off the back, and it would get so hot you could only use it for a certain period of time. So yeah, that was back in the early 80s.
Yeah, I remember when Apple went to 128K, and people's minds were blown that we doubled it.
Yeah, we're aging ourselves now, Jason. Jeez.
Yeah, we definitely are. Besides yours, what's a book everyone should read?
I should know the answer to these questions. I look around my room, I have a bookcase I've got. A book everybody should read. I think Peter Diamandis' books are good. Whether you start with Abundance or The Futurist Faster Than You Think, he's got a new book coming out. They're all good because they are an optimistic view of the future. We all spend too much time enjoying Hollywood movies, whether it's The Terminator or The Matrix or Ex Machina. Pick your sci-fi movie, and they all have this dystopian view of the future because a utopian story is rather dull. Right? It doesn't. If Arnie had dropped through a hole in time from the future and said, "Hello, everybody, would you like a cup of tea?" It just wouldn't be very exciting. He needs to be a killing machine going after Sarah Connor. And so what I like about Peter's books is they're a counterbalance to that, and they make the case for a future fueled by technology which is even better than we can imagine. And I love that one of his favorite phrases is, the only time better than today is tomorrow.
I love that. Yeah, let's leave the dystopian stuff for the movies, and let's make a choice to be optimistic about all technologies and how we as humans can work together to really, like you've said, amplify ourselves with the technology.
Yeah, and Hollywood movies are great as a cautionary tale. I talked at the beginning about what's the future we want to build and what's the future we want to avoid, and it's important to think about that second question, and Hollywood is good for that. But that doesn't mean that we need to be all miserable and forget the future we want to build and take agency in making it happen. Let's make the world a better place with technology.
Yeah, you and I both remember a time when people would say, it's just a movie. Good, entertaining, fun lessons, but it's just a movie. Favorite recreational activity?
Listening to music, probably. Drinking wine, collecting wine. I live in Oregon, and we're on the doorstep of amazing wine country. So it's very pleasant to just drive out of a weekend and do a little bit of tasting, have some good tunes on in the car. Probably a good. That's how I enjoy my time.
That sounds fantastic. What is your dream vacation spot?
I don't have a particular spot. When I grew up in Europe, so I had access to travel very early on in lots of countries early on. And I quickly realized I'd been to about as many countries as my age. So now I have this thing where I always want to go to more countries than my age. I've got a few in the bag at the moment. I'm on 77, I think. I'm going to go to my 78th country in August this year. I'm off to Montenegro. So it's wherever the next country is. And I just love immersing myself in new cultures, trying new food, seeing new landscapes. There's no particular place other than where's the next country.
That's great. You're almost halfway.
Oh, okay. I gotta go faster then.
I think there's 190. So.
Oh, I thought you meant with our questions in this game show. Okay.
Oh no, we're just about done with these questions.
Okay. Phew.
I can come up with more if you want, but no. The next one is, besides AI, because we're talking a lot about that. What's a trend you're excited about?
I would really like to see vertical takeoff and landing, electric vertical takeoff and landing, essentially a flying car, come into market. And that looks like that's going to happen. I talked about that in my first book, and I gave that a 10-year time horizon. I wrote that book in 2019. So I think we're on track that we're going to see those in some American cities within the next few years. So I'm excited to see that finally happening.
Yeah, and I think AI is going to be a big part of that. As someone who has flown airplanes before, I know how much workload a pilot has to do, and it's kind of beyond what most people do just driving their car. But with AI, it can automate and amplify a lot of the things that we used to have to do in our brains and with our hands and feet. So,
yeah, fly by wire.
Yeah. Last one: favorite sports team or player?
I have to credit this to my dad as well. He is not into sports, and so neither am I. The only sporting event that I ever watch is the World Cup, and the only team I support is, of course, England. I don't have a favourite player, but yeah, I love watching England. I can't wait for the World Cup to start in June.
Yeah, coming up really quick here.
Yeah, and I know I'm a weirdo because most people, love sports and they have their stats, and I've just never got into it. I'm lame, I suppose.
I'm not a stats guy. I'm kind of a Boston sports fan because that's around where I grew up. I'm a Vegas Golden Knights fan because I live here now, but I can't remember all the stats. I would never be like a good call-in sports radio guy because I just can't remember all that stuff for whatever reason. So it's yeah. So well, thanks for playing our game.
Thanks for letting me play. It was fun.
It's great to get to know you a little bit outside of the tech stuff. Now, as you know from your career, we haven't even delved into your career. I know you were at Intel, you were at DeepMind, you did a bunch of that kind of stuff, just to let the audience know. But as you know from your career, guiding an organization through change is one of the hardest leadership challenges out there. The last 20 years are littered with failed mergers and acquisitions. What are some of the common implementation traps organizations face with AI?
I'll give you 3 reasons that AI deployments have failed. And this is with clients I work with and the challenge that they've had. First one is they don't have the right data. So that's the technical side of things. With AI, the data you give it, whether that's the training data that you use to create it or the data you give it access to so that it can do its job, if it's an agent, if that data isn't well organized, isn't clean, isn't accessible in the formats it needs, then you're going to fail. So it's a big one that I wrote a whole chapter about making your data AI ready in the book to help guide leaders through that. But the biggest reasons, that's sort of a foundational thing you have to do. The biggest ones are a lack of communication and a lack of inclusion. So I had a client who was early building agents. They built a few simple agents. They went to roll them out to their employees, and their employees were like, what is this? I'm not using AI. Are you kidding? You're trying to get rid of my job. I'm not using it. And they refused to use it. And some of them quit. Said, if you force me to use AI, I'm going to quit. And so they had a real employee relations issue. And I was asking the leaders, so when you were designing these agents, did you include the employees that it was going to affect in the design process? Well, no. We built them and then we thought that they would just use them. So that lack of communication, lack of inclusion led to 2 problems. And there's 2 pieces to this that mean you have to communicate well. The first one is if you don't include people in designing their own future, feeling like they have agency in that, you're going to create a lot of saboteurs, and you want supporters, not saboteurs. The second thing that happens is, and we sort of touched on this earlier, the world as is described in the manual is not the world as actually practiced, right? Humans, we're creative souls. We find workarounds. We find better ways to do things. And if you design an agent based on what it says in the manual is the way people do work, and you try and deploy it, you've just created an agent for a world that doesn't exist. And so that's why you need to involve people who are doing the work up front, so it's actually going to land and be productive in the workplace. So those are the big ones. And I think it really comes down to communication for leaders. Leaders need to be exquisite communicators of with them and with who. What's in it for me? So helping every individual in the company understand why will AI make their job better, not worse. And 2, with who? What's in it for us collectively? Tie using AI to the mission of the company, the purpose. People go for a paycheck, of course, but they're there as well to do something for other people, whether it's making bread or providing financial services, whatever it might be. We're there in service of other people. Link that mission to AI and say, we're going to use AI to amplify our ability to succeed in this mission and to help people more. Get people enthused about what's in it for us and how we're going to execute the mission more effectively.
Fantastic. We've talked a little bit about how to get the employees on board, how to build some trust with them. We also have customers, we have other stakeholders. What are some things we need to think about, principles we need to think about as leadership if we are bringing AI into our companies? How do we build trust with our customers? How do we build trust with other stakeholders?
Yeah, I mean, it all comes down to responsible deployment of AI, which is that part of the AI ultimatum, right? There's you got to do it and you got to do it right. Sort of the summary of the AI ultimatum. You need to honor your customers. You can use AI to do surveillance at scale. Should you do that? Well, not without their permission. There's benefit in going to a customer and saying, hey, if you let us observe the way you work, then our AI will be able to support you in more intimate ways and help you, be more useful to you. But you have to allow people to opt into that. So there's a lot of work you have to do around privacy, around thinking through what is reasonable. I had one client that wanted to use AI to put microphones in a showroom to try and listen to what people were saying, so they could then modify their sales patter as they moved into another room and have a more effective sale. Hang on a minute. Would you be okay if that information got out into the press? Well, and so, you have to ask these questions. There are things you can do with AI, and there are things you should do with AI, and they're not the same thing. So leaders need to be very thoughtful about protecting their brand and treating their customers and their employees in a way that they would want to be treated themselves.
It's fascinating to me that we talk about this new technology of AI, but so many of the human concerns about it are the same concerns we've had about many technologies going back at least 100 years, and how the solution is still, I learned it as a young ROTC cadet in college, and they said, if you're wearing your uniform and someone from the press approaches you, don't say it out loud unless you want to see it on the front page of the New York Times. Right? I think that's a fascinating piece of advice you gave. Is this something you would want to see in the press? If it's not, you might want to reconsider if this is the thing you want to do.
Yeah, and you're essentially building a machine workforce alongside your human workforce. So as you're building those agents, those digital employees, you need a code of conduct for them the same way you have a code of conduct for your human employees. And that means you have to put a whole set of governance and think about the ethics of what you're doing. The same way you wouldn't want a human employee to make mistakes and do things that are inappropriate. You don't want an AI to do that either. So you have to be thoughtful about this and wrap governance around it. And there's a whole chapter on that in the book as well, about what are the things you need to think about, what are the corner cases, or how do you make sure that humans remain in the loop, overseeing the work of the machines so that they behave in a way that you would want them to.
Yeah, there's a lot of really great stuff about this in the book, and it gets really detailed. I can't say enough good things about the book. I'm kind of ready to start reading it over again, just because I learned so much from when I started the book to when I got to the end of the book. I'm like, I need to go back and see some of the stuff from the front again. Okay, well, I've got you here. We talked about DeepMind. I definitely want to get your thoughts on artificial general intelligence. First, please explain for the audience what that is, and then what you think the future of it is.
Yeah, so the artificial general intelligence is a term that's been around some time. Everybody has a different definition for it. The one I have found is the most useful and probably the most commonly used is human level intelligence. So an AI that can do a task as well or better than any human on the planet. So whether that is a cognitive task or perhaps a physical task in the form of a robot. So that's what people generally mean by AGI. Some people have more esoteric standards like, well, it's an AI that's capable of generating $1 billion worth of value. There's all sorts of different metrics people use, but I find that human level intelligence is a fair comparison. And then beyond that is super intelligence, where you have an AI that is smarter than a human at any task. And it could be 10% smarter, or it could be 10,000 times smarter. That's all this sort of ASI, artificial superintelligence. And the question is, when is this coming? I speak to people in the industry, and the estimates range from, if you're Elon Musk, it's late this year. If you are a bit more pragmatic, perhaps, then you're saying, well, probably, between 2030 and 2035. But there are very few people now who think this is beyond 2035. This is going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years. And the smart money is kind of on around 2028, 2029. But the same way that there's this thing called the Turing test, which was, could you build a machine that you could talk to and you couldn't tell whether it was a human you were talking to or a machine? And that kind of passed quietly by us a few years back. I suspect that when AGI comes, we'll just one day go, oh, I suppose we're there now. It won't be a big moment. There won't be a headline. It will just be, another thing that creeps up on us.
Yeah, and you do talk in the book about how the Turing test is kind of obsolete at this point, and there are a couple other tests that are kind of practical things that we can use to say, oh, have I run across an AGI? And we all kind of shrug and go, well, I guess it's here.
Steve Wozniak, one of the co-founders of Apple and their sort of lead engineer to begin with, he has a great one, which is, can a robot walk into a house it's never been into before and figure out how to make a cup of coffee? Because, it's quite a complicated task to be able to figure out how to open cupboards, and then what are the coffee making facilities here? Is it a French press? Is it a coffee making machine? Am I doing it with instant? How do I boil the kettle? Right, all of that is quite complicated. So people have all these interesting tests, and I suspect we'll pass them all very quickly.
Yeah, and if you're working on that robot and you get it working, I will let it walk into my house.
The first humanoid robots available for you to have in your home will ship in the second half of this year.
If they can clean windows, I'm into it. I have one of those little robot vacuums. I have it because a friend gave it to me. He and his wife got a new one, and he was like, I don't want to throw this out. Do you want this? I was like, yeah, I'll play with it. I'll probably use it for 2 days and throw it out. But it's life-changing. So now, something that can do the windows, I'm into it.
And cook and pick up all the Legos off the floor and tidy and clean and do the laundry. And because it has an AGI brain inside it a few years from now, your robot is also going to be there to be able to be a tutor to your kids, to be your home decorator, to cut your hair, to, you name it, to be a doctor or a nurse. It's astonishing what these things will be able to do in our homes just a few years from now.
Yeah, and make sure you treat those robots nicely. Again, let's be optimistic. Let's not get to that dystopian movie, right?
Yep. Yeah, but we all need to be careful with these things. They all need a big red switch on the back that says off.
Absolutely. What's coming up for you in the next few months?
I am traveling the world, doing talks. A lot of businesses now have got to we know AI is important. We've got a feel for the different flavors of AI. But what's this AI first thing? How do we become AI first? Why is that important? What does it take? And so that's what I'm on the road helping customers understand is, what is AI first? How do I get there? Why do I need to do it? And why is it such an imperative? Because the companies that don't make the leap to AI first will be gone 5 years from now. So that's kind of my personal mission, to sort of save the brands that I love by helping as many companies as I can to understand and make this transition in the next couple of years.
Yeah, I think that's really important. We're not talking about losing a little bit of market share. We're talking about being gone.
Yeah. Yeah, when your competitor is outperforming you because they're able to serve 10 times the market at 1/10 the price because they've put AI at the engine, at the core of their business, there's just no coming back from that.
Absolutely. All right. As we wrap it up, any other advice for leaders looking to amplify their people's capabilities with AI?
Yeah, build your own AI acumen. Lean into it. That's why I wrote the book for people, to arm leaders with the knowledge so that they can ask well-informed questions. And so build your own AI acumen and make time for your team members to also build their AI acumen. Encourage them to spend half an hour a day, 15 minutes a day, half an hour a week, whatever you think you can spare to build their AI acumen, to learn about the different flavors of AI, how you can solve problems with it, and to try this stuff out. Everybody needs to try these tools because the more competent you are at using them, the more you understand AI's capabilities, and the more you can apply them at work to solve business problems and move your company forward and hopefully become AI first.
Yeah. Everybody, go get the book, The AI
I got one
Ultimatum.
too.
You
There you
got
go.
yours there too, see?
I got mine too. I got mine in paper. You got paperback? You've got hardback,
No,
I
I
got
have the
paperback. So
hardcover. Thank you for sending
yeah,
it,
you
by
got
the
the
way.
best one. Yeah, of course.
It's fantastic. Yes, if you want to build your AI acumen, get the book. It is an easy read. It is not overly technical. It's just enough to go, okay, now I have technical questions. I can go talk to someone who's technical about this and get them explain it to me. And it does go into a lot of the stuff of how do we amplify people? What are the strategic imperatives we need to think of as leaders? How do we build trust with people? That kind of thing. It's all in the book. Get it for yourself. And honestly, if you want your team to build their AI acumen, get a copy for everyone on your team. It will be worth it. It's a fantastic book. Steve, this has been so
Thanks,
great. Thank you so much for joining us today. Where can everyone get the book and where can they find you so they can also thank you for joining us?
Yeah, you can find me on my website, very easy, stevebrown.ai. And I have a blog up there. If you want to learn more about AI first, you can check that out. You can also get links to my book. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, any good bookstore.
Everywhere you get your books. Well, thank you again for joining us today, Steve. I want to thank all of you for watching and listening. If you found this conversation valuable, go ahead and share it with someone who can use it. Leave a comment. Don't forget to subscribe. And since I'm asking everybody for favors, if you could go on your podcast platform, your podcast listener or viewer, leave us a 5-star review. Helps us build the audience and get these conversations out like the great one we just had with Steve right now. And we do have a lot more of these coming your way. So go out there, do great things today. Onward and upward.